Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started this evening. On behalf of the Brenau University Executive Women's MBA program, welcome to each of you. Brenau University has a 143-year legacy of educating and empowering women, and the first of its kind Executive Women's MBA program is another example of Brenau's innovation in meeting the needs of women in our changing social and cultural environment. A key component of this program has been introducing our students to women who are blazing trails, breaking ceilings, climbing ladders, all while supporting, encouraging, and helping other women to do the same. We do this largely through our speaker series, which has been very generously sponsored by the Northeast Georgia Health System. Tonight's program has certainly been a collaboration, as we have guests from the Brenau community, including our president, deans, faculty, staff, students, and trustees, the larger Gainesville community, and the even larger international Rotary community. To offer a brief welcome from Rotary, I would like to introduce Stivall, who is a past director and treasurer for Rotary.
Good evening, Julie and Jennifer and everyone on the call. What an honor for not only for Brenau University, but for Rotarians and Rotaractors in North Georgia to have Rotary International President Nominee Jennifer Jones with us in Gainesville this evening for the Brenau Women's Leadership Series. For those who haven't heard Jennifer before, after this evening, you're going to individually know whether you're a Rotarian or not, while 1.5 million Rotarians and Rotaractors around the world are elated to have Jennifer Jones leading our organization in the 2022-2023 Rotary year. Welcome, Jennifer, and back to you, Julie.
Thank you, David, so much. And I will begin with one question. We've been collecting questions from our registrants, but I'll give one fun question. Where will you end up if you drive straight south from Detroit? This was one of our registrants, Peter Stoddard, and I'm sure it will challenge each of you. Any thoughts? Straight south from Detroit. The answer is not what you would probably expect. It's right dab in the middle of Canada. So that is a nice introduction to the star of the show, Jennifer Jones. Jennifer is the founder and president of Media Street Productions, a 25-year-old award-winning media company in Windsor, Ontario. She is a proud member of the Rotary Club of Windsor-Roseland. Her talents have strengthened Rotary reach and impact through many roles, including as the trustee of the Rotary Foundation, RI Vice President, and co-chair of the End Polio Now, Make History Today campaign, raising funds alongside Bill and Melinda Gates and their foundation. Jennifer is a leader in cultivating experiential fundraising opportunities such as Rodeo's Polio Golf Day with Jack Nicklaus in Jupiter, Florida, which is more than $5.25 million for polio eradication in a single day. Or innovative virtual COVID-19 Rotary Response event that raised money for COVID-19 relief projects and Rotary's response across the globe. Working alongside political figures, celebrities, and global leaders, she uses her voice to raise awareness and hundreds of millions of dollars to eradicate disease, support peace, and provide clean water and sanitation in developing areas of the world. Her skill as an expert storyteller inspires hope and promise and motivates people to take action. She has received many honors and recognitions, including Rotary's Service Above Self Award and the Citation for Meritorious Service, the YMCA Peace Medallion, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, and the Wayne State University's Peacemaker of the Year, Her recognition there was actually a first for a Canadian. Jennifer is married to a Rotarian and a local family physician. They share a love for many things, including travel, cycling, golf, and relaxing at their family cottage. And they share a thirst for adventure, which has included cresting the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa. I'm sure there's very little that Jennifer could not do. I will say, please, throughout Jennifer's talk, add your questions to the Q&A tab. Jennifer is very excited to make this an interactive and engaging discussion. David and I will facilitate those questions after her discussion. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Julie, and good evening to everyone in Gainesville and the surrounding area. It is an absolute joy to be able to join you tonight and to be able to share some thoughts and some reflections. And I do want to give a big shout out to David, who gave a few remarks just a few moments ago, for the very kind introduction to Brenau, and he has been such a champion of telling me all about your incredible 143-year history. We were chatting just a little bit before getting on the call, a little bit more about the Executive Women's MBA and being a first. Congratulations on that, and I love the fact that you have been so dedicated for the entire history of the institution towards educating women, and what an incredible hallmark of leadership that is, and one that should be celebrated. So I'm tickled to be able to be here to share some thoughts, some reflections about my own personal life, my journey in Rotary, a little bit about leadership. And then, as Julie said, I'd really love to be able to get into more of an interactive dialogue with all of you instead of it being only in one direction. I'd love to hear your questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anything that you'd like to be able to dialogue about would be wonderful. So one of the things that I thought that I would start by telling you a little bit about, and certainly I'm here in the capacity and was invited in the capacity as a leader in Rotary International. And back in August, I had the incredible privilege and honor of being selected to be our first female Rotary president of Rotary International, serving in the year 2022-2023. And we were formed in 1905, a few years after your great institution was formed. And but we also have a rich history, but we've never had a woman serving in this post. And quite honestly, it's because it's taken a little bit of time for our female colleagues to go through some of the same steps that our male colleagues have gone through. Let me give you a little bit of insight in what I mean in that. So, if you can believe this, it actually took a Supreme Court ruling in 1987, recent history, for women to actually be permitted to join Rotary International. And it's a really great, quirky little story of a club in California, the Rotary Club of Duarte. And they were a club that back in 1977, so 10 years earlier, decided that they wanted to have women join their club. And so what they did was they invited some of the local women, there were 4 in particular, and educators primarily, and they asked them to be members. But when they put their membership into Rotary, when they actually registered them as members, they only put their first initial and their last name. And so nobody for 10 years basically knew the better that they had women in their club. Till one day somebody came for some reason, somebody official to their club to do something and realized what they were doing. They actually Rotary pulled their charter. And so that started the journey towards the Supreme Court and what became a hallmark ruling for our organization and for many others, quite candidly, because it paved the way. And for Rotarians who are on this call, this is the story of a woman named Sylvia Whitlock, who was in line to be the Rotary president of her club at the time the charter was pulled and the time the Supreme Court ruled. And so when they turned it over and said that women were to be permitted, she was already in the seat to be Rotary Club president and became our very first, breaking that glass ceiling for the entire organization. And so we have journeyed over these past couple of decades together with our male colleagues. And our infrastructure provides that we have a club experience, and you might become a Rotary Club president. And when you're finished that, the world opens up to you. There's opportunities to perhaps be a district governor. I know that there's some governors and past governors who are on this call of a geographical area. And after that, you might entertain becoming a member of our international board, which was the path that I took, and serving for a region that covered parts of Canada and a wide swath of the upper part of the United States. And during that time, I had the pleasure to serve as our international vice president, and that was an incredible honor. And then in August to be selected as our president. So it's taken some time for women to ascend into positions in our organization, but that's because we had to put in the time. We had to join. We didn't want a woman to be selected as president just so we could check a box. We wanted someone who was qualified to be in that position. And there's only really a handful of us that have served as a director of Rotary International. One of the qualifications, you have to have served on our board, and that there's only a few of us that have done that. Now, many more are serving, I'm pleased to say, on the board right now, and in the next couple of years, we have a considerable amount as well. And so, in the words of someone famous in your country right now, I may be the first, but I certainly will not be the last. That said, let me tell you a little bit more maybe about my own personal journey, and then dive into a couple things that are really top of mind for us right now as an organization. I actually started out as a rookie reporter in Windsor, Ontario, here where I'm located. And at the time, I was still attending the University of Windsor, where I actually went on to chair the Board of Governors there. And so I have a deep respect for this kind of institution of higher learning. And so when I was attending school, I was also, as I say, a rookie reporter. And I used to cover the local Rotary Club meetings. The sessions obviously were all male because women at that point in time, this is the early 80s, hadn't been permitted to join. And so I remember going in and being somewhat intimidated actually by the experience. Here were all these power brokers of our community and leaders from across the globe who would be speaking at a Rotary Club meeting. And I was there with my trusty microphone waiting to get the scoop. And so, it's kind of interesting that flash forward 30 plus years, and some of those folks, or some of those men, are some of my dearest friends, some Rotarians who I've had a lifelong friendship with ever since. And so I started in that capacity. A few years later, I did start my own media company, and we turned 25 this year, which, quite honestly, it makes me shake my head. I'm not sure how 25 years went by so quickly, but it did. One of the hallmarks of what was important to me when we first started, and I had 3 business partners at the time, and quickly everyone kind of went off to do other things, and I was sort of the last man standing with our team, which was great. But when we formed the company, and the way that we still do business today is not only to profit ourselves, but to profit our community. And that's been, to do it with a voice of integrity and respect, and to do it a little bit differently and perhaps more progressively than had been done in my community in the past. And so that has been something that has served us very well. We're a well-recognized corporate community leader, myself and my team. And one of the reasons why I believe that has been so important is that people understand that they know that they can trust us. They know that when we say we're going to do something, that we deliver. And one of the reasons I think that has been of enormous benefit to the success of our company is that instead of having to market ourselves in a really direct way to a lot of people, word of mouth has always served us well, because we keep our promises, and that's something that aligns so much with Rotarians. We make promises and we keep them. I'll talk a little bit about polio, our largest corporate initiative, in just a second, because that is the hallmark of how we as Rotarians keep our promises. So I've spent 25 years in that industry. We do corporate video, we do commercials, media training and corporate communications, crisis management, different things like that. And it's given me a wonderful opportunity to make, incredible connections. And, honestly, the journey through Rotary and my own vocational life in media has been so much in tandem. And what I mean by that is that my journey in Rotary has provided such incredible leadership opportunity, such skill set development that has applied so directly into what I've done in my own work life. So what do I mean by that? Well, being a Rotary Club president, a Rotary Club member, um, you know, you develop different kinds of skills. I can say without hesitation that I'm better at board governance. I'm better at event planning. I'm better at public speaking. I'm better at so much more because of that experience and how much that's been able to meld and intersect with that professional life. And it's interesting, if I think back to sort of my earliest days, and I think about what drove me to service, and both in my professional and in my volunteer life, it really comes down to my parents. And I think that that's probably something, hopefully, that is something that gels with some of you as well. And they really gave my two brothers and I the opportunity to dream and to dream big. And they never told us that we couldn't do something. They always let us know that whatever we wanted to put in front of us was achievable. And, they were also there for the times when maybe we didn't completely achieve what it was that we hoped, but they always were there to encourage that next step. I had crazy dreams when I was a kid. I used to set up lemonade stands and have, a fair in our backyard with all the neighborhood kids and adults all involved, raising money for muscular dystrophy and different kinds of things like this. And again, they never said, don't do it. They always just kind of encouraged it. And so I think because of that, it really became part of my DNA and something that I know continues and will continue for the rest of my life. So that's a bit of my I guess my vocational background. Leading up out of all of that, becoming a community leader was something that felt like a very easy and natural step, and one again that was an opportunity for additional personal growth. And so some of the first steps were, joining a Rotary Club, which was big. Second to that, becoming involved with my local chamber. Taking on the chair of the chamber in our community. And I remember thinking, my goodness, that I don't know. I don't know that that's for me. And I learned so much. And at that point in time, I also was then moving into the leadership opportunities that were at my university. And the term of time that I served in the capacity there as a member of the Board of Governors, and then serving as our chair, which was an incredible opportunity. And for those of you from Brenau, you understand that getting to get your hands around an institution of that magnitude and the opportunities that provides to have great insight into the operations and the mechanism of higher learning. What an incredible platform that was to set me up for the opportunities that I've had in Rotary and the board experience. Some of that training, obviously at varying stages throughout life, you have different opportunities for things that enhance your leadership decision-making development in the future, but that is definitely one of them that is a hallmark. Let me switch over now to a little bit about Rotary, and then we can get into some questions and answers. Rotary has, as I said, has been a leader in the eradication of polio, our #1 corporate priority around the world. We have 1.2 million members, as David said, 1.5 including Rotaractors. That's our youth movement. And members that are ages of 18, it was 18 through 30, but we've taken the upper limit off of that recently. And we have hundreds of thousands of high school aged members of our family as well, which we call interactors. And so, really when you start to think of it with all of our alumni and our Peace Fellows and everyone that's affiliated with our family, we're a movement of about 2 million people. And I really do believe it is a movement, the opportunity for us to literally change the face of our planet. And I know that sounds pretty lofty, but then let's talk about polio, like I said. More than 30 years ago, it was Rotarians who said, we think that we can eradicate a disease. And one of our colleagues, David and mine, one of our colleagues a couple of years ago made this reflection, and it sums it up pretty well. If we had gone to Rotarians 30 plus years ago and said, we need you to raise $3 billion. We need you to immunize, rather, we need you to raise 2.1 billion. We need you to immunize more than 3 billion children, and it's going to take you more than 30 years to do it. Would we have done that? Would we have selected to take this on as a corporate initiative? Probably not likely because of the enormity of this task. But we did. We took it on, and we've been in it to win it for decades. And so it's an interesting story. We are down to 2 endemic countries in the world, and we've reduced the cases 99.9% across the globe. The 2 remaining countries of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The 4 last remaining countries, aside from those 2, were Nigeria, which we just took off of the endemic list last August. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And prior to that, India, which really, quite candidly, was an obstacle that we thought was almost insurmountable. And being able to take them off more than 6 years ago of the endemic list was a Herculean effort. More than 400 million children immunized every year. It is nothing short of extraordinary what the public health infrastructure that we have created along with our partners, the CDC, UNICEF, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Gavi, the WHO. We have really, as a collective, been able to tackle this. And this public health infrastructure that we have created with our partners in more than 70 countries not only has allowed us to tackle polio, it's also allowed our frontline polio workers to pivot, a 2020 word, pivot into frontline COVID workers. And right now, at a time when our world needs us most, these workers are on the front line helping to shut down COVID and to provide aid to communities in many parts of our world. It is something that we're taking a very serious look at as an organization right now. As Rotarians, we have stepped up literally in every corner of the world to provide PPE, ventilators, to raise money for food scarcity issues, to take care of our neighbors, to be compassionate and caring to one another at a time when we're seeing some of the darkest days we've ever lived through. And we have raised, we've actually put more than $30 million through our foundation directly into grants, both global grants and COVID relief grants, right directly to the front lines. Now, that sounds nice, and $30 million is a lot. That's what's technically moved through our foundation in getting to the front lines. But Rotary Clubs, more than 35,000 Rotary Clubs around the world, their funds didn't go through our organization. They went right straight to the front line because we are people that take action. It's one of the hallmarks of who we are. We're people of action. And so I dare say it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that our family has been able to put into infrastructure needs that have been so necessary for protecting people across our globe. And we're going to continue to take steps. We have a task force right now of our most senior leaders in our organization of both Rotary and the Rotary Foundation, and we're meeting regularly right now. The primary initiatives that we're taking to build a voice behind vaccine hesitancy, also to use our voice to say that vaccines work. We are the vaccinators. This is something that this is our wheelhouse. This is something that we know. And then also working with our municipal, our regional, our national governments to say, how do you need us to help? And in some of our countries, like yours and mine in the United States and Canada, we have more formalized healthcare infrastructure. In some parts of the world, there isn't. And so Rotarians are taking a very active role on the front lines in how we can help to set up some of the logistics, quite candidly. Because COVID is an injectable vaccine, it requires a special medical person to be able to administer it. And so for Rotarians, the kind of logistics background and the administrative help that we're able to provide is critical and is necessary. And I couldn't be more proud to be a member right now when we are literally helping out in far and wide ways in many parts of our world. One of the countries right now, to bring India back up again, they have hit the ground running with an incredible national infrastructure led by Rotarians working directly with their Minister of Health. and a structure that tiers all the way down to the local community levels. And I know that this will be a best practice that we will hear about in the years and decades to come, of how they were able to immunize the breadth and scope of people in that nation. Other things that we're celebrating as an organization right now is a stronger movement with diversity, equity, and inclusion. We formed a statement and have taken ownership of this as a topic, and we're working diligently to work with our Rotary clubs and districts and regions around the world to have dialogue about how we can make sure we are the best reflection of our communities and that all of our voices are represented. It's something that's critically important to the work that I'm hoping to do in the next couple of years. And one of the last things I'll tell you is that as of July 1st, one of the additional things that we're adding to our fold of things that we make priorities is the environment. And so we're going to be taking continued action. Our Rotarians have been certainly making the environment a priority for decades, but we're going to be doing it in a much more fulsome way starting on July 1st of this year. Anyhow, I have said a lot, and I wanted to get into a dialogue with all of you, so why don't I stop at this point? Julie, David, why don't I turn it over to you, and I see that I've been out of my peripheral vision. I've seen a lot of things flying by, so let's see what people would like to talk about.
My goodness, Jennifer, thank you so much just for sharing kind of your history and your passion for all that Rotary stands for. It's really quite remarkable. I'll ask first question, and it actually came in several days ago with someone's registration. And they asked, and it was actually from a male Rotarian, given that women members have not always been met with total acceptance in Rotary's history, do you think that you will be well accepted, or do you think that you will face adversity as the first female Rotary International President in all 35,000 clubs across more than 200 countries? And they did offer, I certainly hope that you will be well accepted.
Well, it's a really insightful question, and one that I'm very pleased to share with you. That one of the things I have been very intentional about for many years now, at least the past decade, is making sure that I've been in parts of our world where I've been able to sort of gauge a barometer on the acceptance of female leadership. And certainly as an international organization where, you know, our board and all of our different leadership positions across the globe, I've had an incredible opportunity to interface and interact directly with people of every culture, race, and religion. And so I think that it would be foolhardy to say summarily that no, I'm not going to have any pushback. I think that that's probably not true, but it isn't something that is in the forefront. It's not something that's a major focus. Well, you know, I want to recognize one point, and you know, because this is an executive women's MBA, I do want to call out one thing, and I hope that this is something that perhaps resonates, but it's something that's part of at least my life experience. One of the ways that we need to recognize adversity is for women in particular to be more intentional about raising each other up and to celebrating our achievements and to not tearing down those around us. And so sometimes women, maybe sometimes we're not always so good to each other. And I don't know the reason for that. I think sometimes it's that people are trying to maybe find their way to another step or whatever it is. But the best thing that we can do to remove adversity is to make sure that we're looking out for each other, to look for the best and the brightest, and to raise each other up, to cultivate other additional women leaders. And I really, truly hope that my voice is going to be one that helps to inspire others to say, if she can do it, so can I. And that encourages other leaders to then step forward and in turn inspire others behind them. And not just women, but men and women. I believe that the best hallmark of us as a globe, and then sort of on a smaller scale as an organization, is to celebrate diversity and the diverse perspective that we all bring to solving problems. If we all looked at things through one lens, we'd only ever solve things one way. But because we're able to bring together different gender, different culture, different religion, different race, we are able to look at things, particularly in Rotary, through a lens of this diverse perspective. And I believe that's something incredibly powerful and definitely worth celebrating.
All I can say is hear to all of that. And David, I'll turn it to you to ask the next question, please.
Jennifer, I'm going to take maybe 3 questions from different people that say some of the same things and roll them into one question. Your comment about Rotary experience translating into development in your businesses and your profession. The question is, how do we get Rotary districts and clubs to recognize this, actively promote it? And along with that, there was some thing about questions about mentors in your life and how can another question said, how could older members play in there? So I wonder if you kind of speak to that for a few minutes and also tell us about partnerships that we have like that might assist that, like the Toastmasters, for example.
Sure. So let me start with a ground setting sort of comment on what I think about age, because that will help to frame how I'm going to talk about mentorship. So oftentimes within our organization, we're looking for younger members to join, which we need to do because we need to make sure that we succeed for the long term. But the more important part from my perspective is that we need to always be looking for young thinkers. And, you know, I say this often, but have you met a 25-year-old who's old? Have you met an 85-year-old who's young? I think you kind of get where I'm going with this, is that, you know, being progressive in our thinking is something that keeps us young. And it is something that is incredibly important to me from a mentorship perspective. I mentioned earlier about Rotaractors being sort of our 18 to 30 plus demographic within our organization. And there's a lot of conversation about mentorship. And if I think about my own role and the mentors that I've had in my life, first and foremost, I never actually asked someone to be a mentor. And it's interesting as I, through life, have reflected upon the people who have mentored me. And quite honestly, most of them have been men. The people who have opened doors to other circumstances, to other opportunities, to other positions. And I'm very grateful for those opportunities that they provided. But in terms of Rotaractors and mentorship, we often think of mentors sort of in this kind of hierarchy, that there's someone who knows something and someone who needs to learn something. And I'm very much more a proponent of maybe a cross-mentorship model, where we actually have so much to learn from each other. And, you know, I was on a call just last night with my cousin and her 18-year-old son. And he said, he was talking about the fact that his generation is, you know, they're digital native, obviously, but their life is so, has been defined by their access to information and what they've been able to appreciate and understand and the knowledge level that they have. And quite honestly, he talked about the empathy that they have for people around the world because they see it. And so, you know, for many of us, we think back to our childhood, maybe our teens, even, you know, early 20s, whatever. We didn't have these things that were an appendage of our arm where, you know, news flashes come up and we know exactly what's happening in every corner of the world at any given time. But they do. And it's a different kind of generation. And so when I think about this sort of maybe cross mentorship, we have to learn from each other. I think it's an important step forward for us to succeed, is to understand how we all look at things, and that there are people who maybe don't have the expertise yet or the life experience, that we can help bring them up. But then where we have that experience, they can help us to understand the best of moving forward and how we can do it together, that there's no right or wrong way, that we need to figure these things out in a collaborative kind of way. So for me, that's sort of more of the definition of how I see mentorship, and I hope that's something that resonates with all of you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we're not taking these in any order. We're just looking around for the panelists and the attendees. We will get to yours. But I see this one stands out to me. It says, what is the best advice that you personally took that allowed you to become a successful female that you would like to pass on to other young professional women in today's society?
Best advice that I've been given. Wow. Well, best advice I could give, I guess, either one. Best advice, I guess well, I'm going to take it back to what I told you about my parents and the fact that they gave us and instilled in us the ability to think big, to dream, to follow your dreams, to never let someone put a wet blanket on them. And this ties maybe indirectly into the question of adversity and what have I faced in that regard. You know, um, I don't apologize for being a feminine leader, and I don't try to make myself a leader, a woman leader who appears to be a man. I think that there's room for all of us and all of our different styles. But I have been told occasionally that maybe I need to, be a little bit more male in my technique, or a little bit more authoritative or whatever. And I think the advice that I would give you out of all of that is to be true to yourself. You have to understand your own internal compass. You have to stand for what you believe in. You have to be authentic and real, and understand that you shouldn't apologize for that. And so, don't let someone put a wet blanket on your dreams. And if you aspire to something, that there is nothing in this world that is impossible. And right now, probably more than ever, I think that we have been placed at a point in time where our ability to sort of understand that we are all equals in humanity at some level. And I mean it from the perspective that right now, all bets are off. Everybody's in their homes. We're all having to be socially distant. We're all at an equal level right now. And I think it's been a very humbling experience for a lot of people to be able to look around and understand that each one of us has been having to walk through this together. Every man, woman, and child in our globe, that we have gone through something like this together, is incredibly profound. And the lessons out of that not one of us is better than another as a human being. I think those are big lessons for us to be able to learn. And I think I've detoured off of the question.
No, you did very well with it, actually. We have a question. Do you endorse systems over goals?
That's an interesting question.
There's some hardballs in here, Jennifer.
I was just going to say, well, I guess I'd have to sort of think that through. I mean, sort of thinking through the nature of the question. So systems, give me an idea of a system. Like, help
Don,
me
if
with
you,
one a little.
Don, let's see, Richard, if you would kind of put some more to that question, a little more explanation on that question in the chat box, we'll come back to it.
And I guess, David, let me just say this. I mean, certainly, I do believe that setting goals is a very important thing, because as we all know, that what you measure, what you measure is managed, and so that's an important factor in making sure that if you're looking for barometers of success, that you have goals. But I just need a little more help on getting to the systems part.
So going back a little bit to the last question before that, and you talked about us all being in our homes and that type of thing, but you are leading an organization that we hopefully will be out of this pandemic by then. But right now, you're leading an organization, getting ready to lead it in a home role. The question is, could you talk about a little bit about the need to stay focused on the brand in the business, and in Rotary in this time when focus is a challenge, attention is a challenge. Could many times we just do stuff in general rather than specific, rather than keeping our focus? And could you talk to us a little bit about how to keep our focus in these times?
Sure. Well, let me start with maybe a little bit of a personal reflection that about sort of being in this time period. And one of the things that I've been trying to be mindful of as of late, and I mean throughout the whole 11 months now or so that we've been going through all of this, trying to find positives, there's so much negative to focus on. How do you find the positives? And some of that is, I'll end the day and, there might be some stuff, because even though, we're all working from home, I think for many of us, we're going in a million miles faster than we even were in person. And, you know, on a given day, my head will swirl at the end when I think, oh my gosh, all these things happened. But then flip the switch and think, and that happened, and that happened, and that happened, and I talked to this person, and this cool thing happened, and sort of changing the way that we frame things, the opportunities that are in front of us. I think right now it's an incredibly important time for us to go through that kind of thinking, so that, because we are overwhelmed. It was mentioned in the beginning that my husband's a family physician, and he's taking virtual call right now, and many days he'll be doing it from home. The level of anxiety that he is treating is off the charts. And, you know, that's just one person. Certainly that is, you know, a hallmark, and it's going to be something that we are going to have to deal with, you know, coming out of all of this. And so as I start to think about those things that are positive, wiring our brain for positive thinking is so completely important. And I've also reflected upon, what have I done differently during this past year than I would have been doing if I were doing this role in its traditional way? Well, I planted a garden this year. I haven't planted a garden in probably more than 30 years. When I was a kid, 40 years, whatever, a long time ago. But I took incredible joy out of harvesting cucumbers and tomatoes. I'd walk in and say to my husband, Nick, I'm a farmer. I'm growing things. I have plants in my house. I never have plants in my house. They don't live because we're traveling and doing Rotary work or whatever, you know, whatever it is that we're doing. I have so much enjoyed that nurturing aspect of things like that. Consecutive days sleeping in your own bed. For those of you who travel for your jobs, you know what a joy that is to wake up and feel a different kind of refreshed. And so yes, there's lots of things that I wish were different, but flipping the switch perhaps is one of the things I think that's been a big takeaway out of all of this.
Thank you so much. Jennifer, with your experience, your husband as a family physician, with your role in advocating for the polio vaccine worldwide, what do you think is the role of Rotary in advocating for the positive benefits and the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine, because we have such a large reach around the world?
Well, as I was mentioning, and thanks, Julie, for the question, as I was mentioning earlier, we have a task force, which essentially is our President Holger from Germany and our President-elect Shaker from India and myself on the RI side. And then on our foundation side, we have two sort of entities in Rotary. On the foundation side, our trustee chair, Ravi Ravindran from Sri Lanka, John Germ from Chattanooga, Tennessee, who's our chair-elect, and then our chair nominee, Ian Risley from Australia, along with members of our secretariat, our general secretary, and some other experts and people who are helping us really think things through, looking at this kind of strategy, because we have been in the vaccination game, as I mentioned earlier, for more than 30 plus years. This is our space. We exist here. And so for Rotarians to be able to speak with confidence about the efficacy of vaccines, this is something that we have done for decades. And so it's an important time, I think, for us to be able to use our voice for those who may be concerned. Maybe, you know, it's something, we think back to, you know, polio has not been in North America for decades. And other parts of the world, vaccines are just second nature. It's what they do because it's required. There's many people here who just haven't been around vaccines as much. And so I think we need to use our voice to be able to showcase that it's a way that it's a public health victory, and one that we know well. So it's a conversation that is going to be one that is going to go on for a while. I mean, certainly we know that it's going to take months, if not years, for our vaccines to reach everyone who is interested in taking them.
Thank you so much. I will say I recently heard the vaccine here in the United States called a Fauci ouchie. And I will say I can't wait to take my Fauci ouchie. The next question, do you see much gender disparity when it comes to access to Rotary's medical outreach globally? Specifically, you mentioned Afghanistan, India, some countries where gender disparity is probably a bigger conversation than here. So do you see that affecting Rotary's medical outreach?
Well, actually, to be quite candid, the frontline workers in our public health infrastructure, particularly with polio, are women. It's one of the best sort of uh, best tactics is the word I'm looking for, that we've had, particularly in Pakistan, Afghanistan, because it's a woman to woman, building a trust, mom to mom, and polio workers going door to door, finding children, and providing those immunizations, educating the moms about what it is that what it means, and it really is. It's an incredibly powerful thing to understand that has taken actually in areas where women have traditionally been marginalized, that they are leaders in the forefront of this kind of public health.
So I have three for you. One of them is a Rotary related. The next two are going to be softballs. Okay, the fun questions, not so serious. Rotary becoming an organization with people from so many different faiths, while based on a history of Christianity, how long should we continue to offer an invocation as an opening to our meetings, or is that something we should consider?
Wow, you're saying that's a softball?
No, I said then I'm going to give you two softballs
Okay.
to make up for it.
I was going to say, because that's not a softball. So there are parts of let me just talk about it from the perspective of the United States. And depending on which state you are in, which city you are in, it differs night and day between how a Rotary Club meeting starts. In some Rotary Clubs, they start with a religious-based invocation. In some clubs, they start with an inspiration. They've taken it to a different direction to try to remove that. One of the hallmarks of our organization is that we are non-religious and non-political. And so we, as I said earlier, we look to bring diverse perspective together. And so I think being respectful of all cultures, all religions, all different races is something that we take such pride in. So I think that in terms of providing a religious-based invocation, if we're looking for the greatest diversity in our clubs and to reflect our communities at large, that perhaps there's thought given to equity in the kind of religion that is showcased. Maybe it's shifted from one to a different religion in a different kind of week, to make sure that we're being inclusive and that people see themselves reflected in that. One of the easier ways to not have to deal with that is to not do it and move to a more of an inspiration or nothing at all. But I think you have to be genuine to the community that you live in and to what is important to the people that are part of your club. But at the end of the day, hopefully that it reflects the community you serve.
And what a wonderful answer, Jennifer. And while you're on that, before I go to the softball, would you talk just a little bit to the audience about Rotary's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Sure. I didn't get a chance to go too far down that because I was watching the clock and I wanted to make sure that we had time to be able to interact. And so about a year and a half ago, while David was actually on the board, the board took a step forward in embracing and declaring diversity, equity, and inclusion a priority for our organization, and creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, which is foundational to how we operate as an organization. And most recently, in this past summer, the board also created a task force. It's being chaired by one of our current directors, Valerie Wafer from Canada, and she has assembled a very diverse group of people from all walks of life throughout our organization across the globe. And they're meeting right now to create essentially a toolbox, if you will, for clubs to be able to go forward, and different kinds of tips, tools, and tactics for us to be able to integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion in meaningful ways. One of the tools that I have asked them for some assistance in creating is actually more of a mechanism for difficult conversations, challenging conversations, if you will, to be able to be had. And Rotary is in such a unique position, particularly when we think of some of the hot buttons that are going on in North America, particularly in the United States right now. As a sort of apolitical organization that we, I think, are very uniquely poised to house some of the challenging conversations that need to be had in our communities. And so I think that for Rotary Clubs and members who are listening, there's more information that will be coming forward. And certainly it is something that I know I will be making a priority. So more to come.
David, you're muted. It wouldn't be.
I have my pad down, but it wasn't unmuting. So here we go. Were you ever a member of youth organizations of any kind in your teen years, and or members of sports teams, not spectators but active play?
I was a member of Girl Guides, Girl Scouts in the U.S., Girl Guides in Canada. That's what we call it. So I was and a brownie when I was a kid. In terms of organized sports, I didn't do any sporting teams. I took dance for 25 years. I did ballet and tap and jazz, and I got my teacher's papers in that, and I taught for a little while. I desperately love to be back at a ballet bar again, and working out those muscles the way that I used to. But that's probably the space that I've spent the most time in I guess in that kind of physical capacity that you're talking about.
Okay, here's the really cool one. I heard a puppy bark. Tell us about your pet.
I have a miniature golden doodle, and her name is Gracie, and she turned 11 in November. And so again, when you start to think about the positives that we can generate instead of the negatives, being with her for a complete year when normally she would see the suitcase rolling towards the door and would get angry. We've had a lot of time to be together, and I don't want to get emotional on this point, but her doggy life is not going to be forever, and the fact that we got to spend all this time taking walks every day together and being close and snuggling and stuff like that has been a real gift.
Jennifer, it's so great to have you with us this evening. I know we have some more time left, but I'm going to turn it back over to Julie. But I did want to say thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you here in Gainesville, Georgia.
Well, thank you, David, and give Kim, your incredible wife, a big hug.
Thank you so much, President Nominee Jennifer. I think first of my dog, Beauregard, who is going to be devastated when we all go back to school and work, because he's gotten quite accustomed to the attention that he has had over quarantine. So I would ask, just as a closing question, we do have members of Interact, Rotaract, Rotary here with us today. So it spans quite the age spectrum. So if you could give one piece of advice to each of those groups, what would that piece of advice be?
Wow. So best piece of advice that someone ever gave me, a Rotarian, was don't water the weeds. And it's something that I have applied to my personal life, my vocational life, and my volunteer life. And what it means is that you're going to encounter people in your life, regardless of what age you are, whether you're Interactor, Rotaractor, Rotarian, somebody who's negative, somebody, the negative Nellies. We can spend a lot of time in our life giving them oxygen, or we can choose to place our energy on the things where we can affect positive change and the people who need nurturing and want what we offer them. So don't water the weeds. Don't spend your time trying to fix something. Those people who email you 1,000 times because they always have something wrong. You can spend all of your time just trying to deal with that, or you can park that and deal with the stuff that you can deal with.
I couldn't get to my mute button fast enough because I was writing down, don't water the weeds. I'm pretty sure I'm going to print that as a sticker, as a poster, and post that every place I possibly can. And I thank you, because it's very clear that you have spent time really prioritizing the things that you would pour into and making that a priority so that you can have the biggest impact. So I'm thankful very much for you and for the impact that you've had. I'm thankful for Rotary and the impact that organization has had on our world. I'm certainly thankful for Brenau and for what it means to our community and for the women and men that she serves as well. We could not possibly thank you enough. You are welcome anytime you would like to join us. And I will say to everyone, I hope that you all recognize the privilege that it's been to have President Nominee Jennifer with us. This is one of her first engagements as President Nominee. And so we are so thankful that she would take the time to be with us tonight and share her insights and your thoughts with us. So thank you so very much. This was a wonderful way to end a Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, everyone, and be safe and be well.